conference, I'd like you to welcome some young people from Citizens UK who are now going to give us a presentation. Thank you.
Good morning, Liberal Democrats. My name is James Kakanyera. And I'm James's older sister, Eunice. Our church is a member of Citizens UK, an alliance of 250 civil society organisations. We work together for social justice and the common good for our communities. Before the last general election, Citizens UK led a campaign that really matters to children and families. We made a short film to tell you about it. So watch carefully, because I will be asking questions at the end.
Right, this is your last story tonight, kids.
Aww, Mum.
Settle down now. Many years ago, in a land far, far away, there lived a lady called Barbara. Barbara had one of the biggest smiles the world had ever seen. Barbara had a baby daughter called Valentine. Valentine made Barbara smile a lot, but the country where Barbara lived was not safe. So she escaped to Britain. She knew that she and Valentine would be safe there. But one day, Barbara heard the news that turned her smile upside down. Some friends from her country had been taken from their home in London and locked up with their 3 children in a place called Yarl's Wood Detention Centre.
What's a detention centre, Mummy?
Well, Barbara soon found out when she went to visit, it was like a prison. It had guards, barbed wire, and no way to get out. And the children were scared. Imagine your bedroom door being locked from outside. But in the middle of the night, would be woken up by a guard shining a torch in your eyes to check if you are not dead. Over 1,000 innocent children, just like you and your brother, were locked up every year. At Christmas, Barbara felt sorry for the children who were locked up. So she called up Santa Claus and asked him to deliver gifts to them. But what do you think happened?
Did Santa get stuck in the chimney?
Nah, Eunice, he got stuck at security. The nasty guards at Yarl's Wood couldn't let Santa in. They even called the police. Barbara was definitely not smiling now. Do you remember that Barbara was a brave woman? So she made a plan with her friends from Citizens to get the children out of detention. They gave themselves a name, Citizens for Sanctuary, and got lots of powerful leaders like the Archbishop of Canterbury and the Chief Rabbi to support the Sanctuary Pledge.
What's a pledge?
A pledge is like a promise.
What were they promising to do?
They were promising to do everything in their power to stop children being locked up in places like Yarl's Wood. So, just before the big vote, Citizens invited Mr. Brown, Mr. Cameron and Mr. Clegg to come to a big meeting in London called an assembly. Barbara was there and so were thousands of other people. Everyone was on the edge of their seats waiting to hear if Mr. Brown, Mr. Cameron, Mr. Clegg would sign the Sanctuary Pledge. Do you remember what a pledge is?
It's a promise.
That's right. First up, Mr. Clegg came to the stage. He said, "Yes, let us put an end to the shameful practice of locking up small, innocent children. Barbara started to smile. But next up was Mr. Cameron. Nobody was sure what he was going to say. What happens now is not acceptable. Not acceptable at all. If I'm in charge, I will stop locking up children and work with citizens to find good alternatives. Everyone cheered and Barbara's smile got wider. And then, disaster.
What, Mum? What?
Mr. Brown did his speech and everyone said it was great. So great that they completely forgot to ask him about the Sanctuary Pledge. People shouted, "What about the Sanctuary Pledge?" But he had already gone. Barbara's smile went away. But the very next day, she got a letter from Mr. Brown saying that he would sign the Sanctuary Pledge. So now all the men with special powers supported the Sanctuary Pledge, and that made Barbara smile from ear to ear. A few days later, the big vote took place. And do you know who won?
Was it Mr. Brown?
No, James. In fact, no one really won. So Mr. Cameron and Mr. Clegg shared the job of being in charge of the country and told everyone that they would stop locking up children in places like Yow's Wood. Even the Queen agreed. She went to Parliament in a golden carriage and told everyone, "My government will end the detention of children for immigration purposes." Now, Barbara worked with Miss Tether, Mr. Clegg's friend, and Mr. Green, Mr. Cameron's friend, and lots of experts to find ways that we could stop locking up children in places like Yow's Wood. After a while, Barbara went to see Mr. Clegg, who was now called the Deputy Prime Minister. "Mr. Clegg, my friends and I have waited a long time for this day. We have fought hard and we have worked with you to find alternatives. So could you give us an exact date when this country will stop locking up innocent children and their families?"
Wow, that was brave. What did Mr. Clegg say?
Mr. Clegg looked Barbara straight in the eye, shook her hand and said, "I think we can do that, Barbara. I know that Mr. Cameron agrees too. I promise that within 1 year, no more children from your communities will be locked up." And Mr. Clegg did just that. Barbara went home to Valentine and gave her a huge hug and then smiled one of the biggest smiles the world had ever seen. And so ends the story of Barbara the Brave and how hundreds of ordinary people made sure that the children were let out of detention centers like Yow's Wood, never to return there again.
conference. Can you read it? It says, Lib Dems, thank you. Thank you, Lib Dems. Give yourself a huge... Oh, I can hear you. Oh, thank you very much. I'm Jeff Sango. I came from Zimbabwe. Do you want to see the real Barbara the Brave in real life? Yeah. Sure. Do you want to see it? Yeah? Barbara.
Hello. Thank you. I'm Barbara Nalumu from all the way in Uganda.
And my name is Rinka Bralo, and I'm from Bosnia. And we're all leaders at Citizens UK.
For our members, the end of child detention was not just a policy abstract. It was a traumatic reality. We saw children being plucked out of school from our congregations and being damned at that ugly household. Some cynics will tell you, and some other people will tell you that, and obviously these people will be talking from the comfort of their armchairs and their well-paid police jobs, that nothing ever changed. Barbara, what do you say?
Let me tell you, for our communities, numbering thousands of migrant families, everything has changed, right? From those who were with the reality of child detention and who fought very hard for it to be changed, hear the message loud and clear. The campaign has succeeded and the pledge has been honored. Before 2010, 1,000 children were from around my communities were being detained. But now, there is none, as you saw. So, we are here on behalf of 2,165 children and their families who, thank God, will never, ever know how it's like to be locked up in a detention center like Yardswood. Because under the last government, 3 new children were being detained every day. You can take pride that every single day there are 3 kids out there who go to school, who play with their friends, who soundly go to sleep in their beds without the fear of being locked up. Thank you so much.
Citizens UK is a non-partisan organisation, but we believe in giving credit where credit is due. We want to thank all of you, all Lib Dem activists and campaigners and parliamentary candidates who worked with us and signed Sanctuary Pledge back in 2010, I think. And my friends are giving out these thank you cards to all of you. We also hope that you will share these cards with your friends and colleagues and continue working with us, and that you will share this video because it's going to be, and it already is online on our website. Because it's important to get the message out that the pledge has been fulfilled, that the promise has been fulfilled, and that we can change the world if we want to. And we're grateful to all of you, but we want particularly to recognize 2 people who fought our corner really hard with the government. Please join us on stage, Nick Clegg and Sarah Dagger.
very much. Thanks.
Oh, give us a kiss.
Yeah, absolutely. Barbara, how lovely to see you. Thank you very much. The flowers are for Sarah, right? Thank you so much. That's really kind of you. Right, can I just oh, hello. So I can't resist a baby. Very good to see you. Can I say something? Oh, thank you. Yes, of course you can. Can I just... we're not very accustomed to being thanked for pledges we've kept. So I think that's the reason you got a more muted response than you deserve. And at the end, when I've spoken, I want us to be much more voluble in thanking Citizens UK, because these wonderful people, James, Eunice, Barbara, they are thanking us. They are thanking us, but we should be thanking them. They got up at 4 o'clock this morning, they told me. You've missed church. I mean, how grateful can I be to you for that? You've come with such sort of verve and optimism, and with such wonderful smiles. Barbara, your world-beating smile is back again, and it's a wonderful thing for you to do this. But really, the thanks is to you. You have been extraordinarily brave. It was an absolute moral outrage that a government in a civilised country was locking up 1,000 entirely innocent children behind bars. And when people tell us that somehow we've, not stuck to our guns, that we're not affecting change, that we're not really making a difference to people in this country, I think we've just been told of 2,165 seriously good reasons and counting, because every single one of those children wouldn't be now living the free and decent and civilised life that they deserve if it wasn't for you, and if it wasn't for you cajoling us into action as well. And before I hand over to Sarah, I really want you also to recognise, I know you know that, but I'm not sure if everybody in the hall does, quite what an outstanding job Sarah did. Sarah was in the Department for Education. Sarah's in the Department for Education for 2.5 years. She has left the Department for Education with a grace that honestly puts all the rest of us to shame. She did so much in the Department for Education, but I saw day in, day out, week in, week out, how she ensured that we didn't just sort of promise to do it but not do it in practice, that we bolted down every single minute detail. I remember sitting with Sarah and officials from UKBA, even examining how the garden would be landscaped in the new stopping off point for those who are leaving this country, so they are not put behind bars. Sarah really deserves all our thanks. So with thanks to the Citizens UK, thanks for these wonderful gold letters. I noticed the Z has got a bit deflated, but we still know what you meant. I'd like to thank you, and with that I also want you to give a warm round of applause to our Sarah.
I remember that meeting actually where you came to lobby us at a conference. And I remember it because it had a very profound effect on me then. Those of you who were there remember we were in a very odd little room in a basement of a church for some hours. But for me, the idea that every human being has inalienable rights is absolutely core to what I believe. The idea that there is an intrinsic dignity that we ought to afford every human being is core to everything that I've always believed, and it's the reason why I joined the party all those many years ago. However, actually as a politician, talking about those things, I think many of you will know this from your experience on the doorstep. You often come to these issues with a weary heart because you know rather than talking about what you really think, your hackles have gone up and you're going to have to defend your beliefs, probably using rather pragmatic or utilitarian terms, not the things that you really want to say. And when citizens came to lobby us that particular afternoon, they did the thing that I'd always wanted to do in public. They just made those arguments that were core to my belief. And I found it hugely moving. And I remember being enormously embarrassed, actually, by how moving I found it then, because it really touched on why I'm in politics. So, I would say to you that this party would have fought to end child detention, whether or not you'd come to lobby us or not, because it runs through our lifeblood. It's what we're about. But what I will say... What I will say is that what you gave me that afternoon was food for the journey. You know, you were the energy that helped us to carry it through, and it wasn't always easy. But you gave us that strength at every stage. So please remember that. When you go to lobby a politician, even if they don't react immediately, you have an impact. Please go on lobbying very hard for the things that you believe in, because you genuinely, as you say, every citizen coming together can change the world. There's just one last thing I quickly want to say, and that's that we've done a huge amount to change the immigration system. And the things that we negotiated, I think, have a real opportunity to change the way in which Home Office officials work with families right the way through. It's not just about what happens at the end of the system, but what happens all the way through. But it's going to take real vigilance to make sure that that bears fruit and that really carries on being correct in detail. And it's really important that we learn the lessons from that work and extend some of that the high values and the high aspirations that we managed there to some of the other areas of Home Office practice, particularly in the way in which they work with children and young people. And in my mind, I think of immediately, for example, the kind of support that we offer children and young people, which often, unfortunately, leaves them in destitution. Now, those are the kinds of issues I raised in government. And now, as a backbencher, I hope you will go on working with me, because I feel passionately that we can change things. And I hope, Liberal Democrats, you will go on supporting these things as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. And we're glad to hear that you're going to be working with us in the future. And we're one step ahead of you. We have set up, we're vigilant, and we're in the process of setting up independent child detention panel. And we're grateful for your support for that, because we want to make sure that we are satisfied that the authorities are accountable to us, and that things like this, that children in immigration detention, are never again. Thank you very much.
Liberal Democrat Conference. It was a pleasure to work with you to end child detention.
As young people growing up, there are so many injustices in the world which we would like to change. Will you work with us again?
Yes!
Will you work with us again?
Yes!
We will be outside after Tim Farron's speech. Please come and say hello.
Thank you once again, and goodbye.
conference, and I think Tim Farron's got a pretty tough act to follow now.